I sort of feel like, given your schedule and everything, like talking about your last record, your most recent record, is maybe something of the past already.
Oh, well, not entirely, but we're. I do actually have a bunch of new songs, so we're kind of getting ready to start thinking about the next one.
There it is. It's already. It's like, it's a new year. It's time for you to pump something else out. Keep coming. But we'll stick with Silver Tears right now. I don't know. Is the pace just something that you wanted to keep? Is it because of whatever notoriety you got on that first solo release there a couple of years back? Give you the confidence to go ahead and shoot the next one out? I mean, where does that all come from?
I love to work, honestly. It's not really work to me. Music is kind of like breathing. And so I don't stop, because if I do stop, then I usually feel like I'm going crazy, and I think I'm going crazy anyway. So I'm just trying to prolong the denial of the insanity by continuing to tour and write songs.
Well, that insanity is what makes your songs unique and notable. So,
well, thank you. I've never heard it described that way. I'll have to get you into my therapist.
Put that on the one sheet, just the full quote. That's why we love it. I mean, the whole backstory, though, I mean, you've got a completely cool backstory. And you coming from, the rock world and doing the glam rock stints and everything, like coming from that world, how do you end up being based in roots music and Americana, whatever version of this is? Like, what's kept you going here when all of that was already there?
Part of it is that I think the two are, in a musical sense, actually kind of aesthetically related in a lot of ways. In terms of the appearance, I think there are comparisons to be drawn as well. For example, if you look at something like what Mark Bolan wore, or what Bowie wore, or whatever. I mean, in its context and in its time, to me, it doesn't seem any different than when Webb Pierce put on one of those amazing sparkly suits, or Porter Wagner, or even Hank. He had some sparkles going on, and that was part of what I was drawn to, even about the roots side of things. It's like those guys were doing something to me that was a really interesting juxtaposition of sort of singing these, very masculine songs, but they look like raging queens on stage. And I just thought, man, that is rock and roll, because that's walking a line that, whether people realize it or not, is subversive art. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy music that has different levels to it that you can engage in different ways with, and so to me I recognize, yes, that they are two different things. They don't seem, I guess, that different to me.
I almost felt sheepish even calling it Americana, and that just ends up where it ends in the CD bends. But had you released it in 1963, it would have been rock and roll.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I always think of it. Yeah. Man. I just call it rock and roll, but I know that it's interesting. I think at some point we kind of dropped the and roll part, and it just kind of became rock. Right. And when I think of bands like that, I think of the Foo Fighters or something like that. And our music obviously doesn't sound like that. It has a lot more of the kind of elbow twitching, kind of danciness to it. But I think that's an underrepresented side of the Americana thing sometimes. And I do think that really does fall under that umbrella, because Americana is a lot of different genres kind of together. So
as is rock and everything else.
Exactly, because that's what rock and roll was originally. It was country and bluegrass and blues and and like all of these other things bubbling up. So to me, it just feels like we're certainly not reinventing the wheel or doing anything that's never been done before.
But you're still doing it in a unique, you're still doing it in your own way, and that's what's drawn me to your music. It's what's drawn the critics to your music, I think, the fans.
Well, thank you.
Although there's a few things I didn't know if this was just coincidence, but because of that past, Search to Destroy in your lyrics in Dime. Yeah, you've got a title called Success, which is also. Yeah, an Iggy thing. It's like, is this on purpose or just complete coincidence?
The Success thing is a total coincidence. The line in Dime is definitely an Iggy reference. I relate to the Stooges in a lot of ways. When Semi-Precious Weapons came out, we were not a band that anybody understood. We were a band that people loved or hated, you know, and
that's fun.
And I think the Stooges were a very similar kind of thing. I'm certainly not comparing our band to the Stooges, who are one of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time, but I think, you know, that I could relate when I hear Iggy in interviews talk about how their band was misinterpreted by people when they came out. Like, I can relate to that on some level, because that's what it felt like in my first band. And honestly, that's what it feels like sometimes, like being in the Americana world, because we're not the like perfect mold of what usually goes over in that world. So we're kind of kicking the legs of the dinner table and seeing if anything's loose a little bit, but I think that's okay.
I mean, there's a great movement of that going on. You know, we just had Sturgill here. You know, he's a great example of that. What is Bell's doing out
Absolutely.
there? You know, and then you know, there's not a lot, but the ones that are doing it,
absolutely,
is really making a. You know,
I admire those guys. Yeah. You know, I think they're drawing a line in the sand in a great way. You know, and asking people to either get on board or get off the train. And I think that you kind of have to have an element of that. You know, to to forge an identity in a time where everything is kind of so like wishy-washy and uncertain. You know, it's nice to have some people that are like, I'm gonna do this, and if you are into it, that's awesome, and if you're not, I wish you well, but I'm gonna keep doing my thing.
I'll actually wrap up with something you were saying there, because in wishy-washy times, one of your lyrics here, I'll ask you, ready to die for a worthy cause. Yeah. What's the worthy cause?
Man, anything, you know, anything worth doing. At that moment, I really don't know exactly what I was talking about, to be honest with you. It all started, that song originally had a totally different opening verse lyric, where I was talking about the song Green Onion. Like, I became obsessed with that song Green Onions by Booker T and the MGs, and I thought, like, that is meat and potatoes rock and roll at its best. But that was kind of like all I felt like I needed to survive. I was on acid at the time, so, but in my mind, that's kind of, you know, how I, you know, it just kind of made me, it was like a suit of armor that I could put on and like go out into this world of just kind of very opaque ideals and ideology and stuff like that, and feel like I had a center. And something that I could stand on my 2 feet in front of people and get behind. And that's what I'm looking for, man. I just want something to believe in, and I really believe in the music that we get up there and do.